Okay, so this is my spoiler review for Alien Romulus. We're going to go into the details of the movie, and I want to let you know that my opinion has slightly changed. Not entirely, but slightly changed from yesterday's non spoiler review because I got to sit here and think about it and, really think about specifically the third act. So actually, before I go into this, let me tell you that if you have not seen Alien Romulus and you don't want to be spoiled, go see the movie, come back and check out the review. There's more good in this movie than bad. There's more good than bad. I still say it's a decent film. It's just that there were a couple of things that took me out of the film. And I want to go into that. I'm going to talk about the good and the bad here, and the ugly, actually, here on this spoiler review, because I can actually talk about it, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you saw the movie. So, we're going to go ahead, no more warnings, we're going to go ahead and get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, the good I talked about in the non-spoiler, practical effects. The first two-thirds were a back-to-basics approach. The alien was scary once again. You had a smaller cast, so you could connect with them better. A bit predictable with what happened with the androids and sort of if you've seen the other movies, you kind of know. You don't even have to see all of them to kind of know where this was going or even have that much familiarity with them. So the movie still, I think, works. The set pieces still work. The first two-thirds of the film, were like, I was wondering if I was going to walk out of the theater and say, okay, this is definitely like a worthy entry. And like I said, I think it's still better. This is still better to me than Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. This is still better, even though they did borrow some things from Alien Resurrection and Alien 3 somewhat, but not entirely. However, that's the good. The performances were good. The music, well, it didn't really interrupt the flow of the film. There were themes that kind of sounded like themes from the first two movies. So it still had the energy of the first two movies, the atmosphere. And honestly, this was going to be like maybe my second favorite movie of the summer behind, at least genre movie, behind Deadpool and Wolverine. But man, there were a couple things in this movie that pulled it down. So let me just go ahead and get into it. First of all, okay. We talked about the good. I'm going to go into the bad here a bit. And again, still a mostly good movie. 75% of the movie was good. So I guess that would mean a 7.5 out of 10. But really, the end of a movie, I think, should earn you more points. If you blow it in the third act, it can make the first two acts not as enjoyable. But with this movie, yeah, I still enjoyed it. This was, as I was watching the movie, I was like, this is going to be a 4K cop later in the year. Now I'm not so sure that I'm going to buy the 4K. I got to think about it. I really do. But we'll talk about the reasons here in just a minute. First of all, the idea that the alien from the first movie survived and was picked up by another ship. Okay, I know the xenomorphs are very strong and they're adaptable. What organism could possibly adapt to space that breathes oxygen? And we know the xenomorphs breathe oxygen because you could hear the alien queen breathing in the final scene of Aliens. Like, you hear her breathing. We know that the aliens can withstand some, but I don't know. That was a little weird to me. But you know what? I'm watching the movie and I sat there and I said, okay, that's one thing where I'm like, got it. Fine. Got it. I can accept it because they really wanted to. They didn't want to set it up to where the aliens all come from a bunch of different planets or they're from their own home world like some of the extra material did in the past. You know, this is still going to tie into the other Alien films, right? So they wanted to kind of give a logical reason as to why there were new xenomorphs, right? Or new facehuggers or whatever. And it does go hand in hand with, the whole, like, the purpose behind the androids and bringing the species to be examined and to be weaponized and this and that we saw in the first couple of Alien movies. So they kept that well. They kept it fresh enough to where it was okay. So again, I was fine. What I think worked in the movie was the relationship between Rain and Andy. And that's because Callie Spaney and David Johnson did great. They had great chemistry, and you could believe, like, the idea of a human being closely bonded with a synthetic human, with an android, to where it's like her brother. That is new territory. That, to me, we saw what happened with Bishop and Ellen Ripley in the second film, and to me that was kind of dancing around it, but here it really felt like there was a genuine admiration and care for each other, right? But man, the scene where Andy quotes aliens and says, "Get away from her, you bitch." That right there felt like the studio came to Fede Alvarez and said, "Hey man, you gotta throw in some one-liners from the other movies. What's a famous line? In space, no one can hear you scream. This time it's war." Those were all catch lines. What about game over, man? Game over. See, that would have made more sense. Having somebody say game over, man, game over would have been a better callback, because that actually makes sense within the body of a story, because you're on a spaceship infected by a predator, not the predator like the Alien versus Predator, but the alien itself is a predator. You know what I mean? It's a very dangerous animal, very dangerous creature. And for him to say, "Get away from her, you bitch," is such a not android thing to do. And it literally felt like somebody from the studio said, "Squeeze it in there." Same thing with the references to Prometheus. Now, I actually really did like that callback, because to me, the story with David is still unfinished. And I don't know if Ridley Scott is still going to do his third movie in the prequel trilogy. I don't know if they're going to just leave it to the comics or a novel, or we don't know, because there's been weird rumors about that he's still going to do it, he's not going to do it. What's the truth with the engineers? How do they fit into all this? I don't know if we're ever going to get those answers. It's kind of fallen off a cliff. But, it makes sense at least that the original black goo, the basically the centerpiece of Prometheus, really of Prometheus and of Alien Covenant, that parasite that David used to create xenomorph eggs and other creatures and things like that. People who haven't seen those two movies are probably going to get confused. And I had originally thought that this movie was not going to reference the prequels. But when I saw that Ridley Scott was producer, it's like, well, it has to tie in, because those are his films. So it did to a degree. We still don't know what the ultimate fate of David is going to be. That's still a big mystery, but that, I didn't hate that. I actually liked it, but again, it, like with the line Andy said, it's like, oh, like, you didn't have to put that line in there. He could have just said, "Get away from her," and just left it there. At least it would have been, or you creature, something that would have been more robotic, and I know that synthetic humans aren't totally robots, but it didn't fit. It did not fit. The big controversy is the third act and what wound up being the final boss. So, in previous Alien movies, the alien was the final boss in the majority of them, but of course the alien queen in Aliens is like, probably the greatest final boss in the franchise. Just the way they did it, the way that it was foreshadowed in the extended cut, and then Ripley ends up in the room with all the eggs and looks up and sees her. Just phenomenal stuff, yo. That Aliens is still a great movie. I rewatched it a few days ago, and I actually like it even more now. I forgot how long it took to get to the planet, but I like it even more now than I used to. So here we have this fetus that the parasite infests, and it basically does what the xenomorph does, in that it comes out, then it quickly grows to, rather quickly, faster than just a few hours, grows to mature size, and that was very weird. It was really, really weird. And it doesn't really sit that well with me now, the more I think about it. Listen, I get what they were going for. And we've kind of seen these like human alien hybrid creatures. Like we actually saw it in Alien Resurrection, one of my least favorite, probably my least favorite Alien movie. Yo, I hate that movie. I really don't like that film. But I don't know, man. It looked like a tyrant. It reminded me of a tyrant from Resident Evil. You know, very similar. They really took a risk with it. It's almost like the movie was going for a, hey, okay, we're going to throw some member berries, some good, some bad, but hey, it's all right because we got something new for you. But the something new, it's kind of like when Burger King did tacos. You go to Burger King for burgers, next thing you know, they did tacos. Now, I remember when Burger King did tacos, and they were not that bad, but even compared to other fast food tacos like Jack in the Box or Taco Bell, or even other places that aren't everywhere, like for example, Del Taco. That's a taco place that not everybody has in their town, but I've been there and it's pretty good. That's not bad for fast food. This felt like they gave you something that was supposed to be maybe some connective tissue to Prometheus with the evolution of humankind, maybe some connective tissue to the engineers themselves, but I don't know how I feel about it, man, because I was wondering if there was going to be some kind of mutant xenomorph to come out of her and her, her pregnant fetus when it was just her baby, but with the I guess the mutagen, I wouldn't even know what the word is for it. There's so many different words. The goo, made it this monster. And we're going to have to wait for interviews. I said this in my non-spoiler. We're going to have to wait for some interviews here. Here's the question. Is this organism, and this is a legitimate question, leave a comment down below with your theory. Is this organism what David and the people in the prequels trying to achieve? Like, is this the organism that they were trying to create to, fight wars and be weaponized? Is this that organism? Because that's how I took it. But it's just weird because it wasn't even a xenomorph. I was hoping for some kind of final boss that would have been maybe a different type of xenomorph. There's different types of you've got the Runner in Alien 3. You've got lots of different hybrid types, especially in the comics. But it was just like the Tyrant. And it was weird. And the more I think about it, the more it's like, this feels like a different movie now. Still a horror film. Still kind of horrific. But it feels like that. Now, again, I still think it's one of the better movies. I still think it's an easier watch than Prometheus. Prometheus is the kind of movie that, it's not a bad movie, but you have to be in the mood for it. Prometheus feels a lot like classic 70s, Ridley Scott sci-fi, except it came out in 2012. There are pros to that film. But this was, I don't know what this was. It's just that the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I'm not sure if I like that third act. But was that enough to ruin the movie? Because the first two acts are so much fun. So this whole idea of like this fetus, xenomorph or whatever you want to call it, I'm sure it'll have a name. Again, I'm very split because it felt somewhat like a B horror film, which some have said that Alien, the original Alien, really inspired those kind of movies. And it definitely, I'm sure it did, because Alien is a very inspirational franchise. It did sort of take this film from, okay, this was supposed to be in Hulu. Now it's in theaters because we're going to get to have Alvarez play with the audio and really give us this immersive experience in the movie theater with sound from all kinds of different places. I went to go see a Dolby, in the big screen. So now we can really experience the horrifying feeling that the people in the 70s felt when they saw the original Alien, right? With the surround sound. But then I'm like, this kind of belongs back on Hulu now. That's how I felt. And I'm so split on it because they really lifted the plot of the film, or at least the fun of the film, of what I was hoping for a lot. And then the last, maybe 25 minutes or so, I don't know how I feel about it. I wish there were more answers. I really do wonder if this is the creature that David was supposed to create. Like, this is it. And if so, with Ridley Scott being producer, that means he had to have been okay with it, right? Was there a story where Alvarez and Ridley Scott like butted heads? I've seen some of their interviews today and they seem to be on good terms. I don't know, man. This movie, unlike James Cameron's Aliens, which actually was a sequel to the first movie. We're not doing what the first movie did. We're going to have some elements of it, but we're doing our own thing. This felt like, okay, it felt like the studio came in and wanted to make certain decisions. And I wonder if you were to somewhat change the ending and maybe cut off that quote-unquote final boss, I wonder if the movie would be more well received. I wonder if I would have felt better about it, you know. I don't know. It was very weird. It just sucks because I'm watching the movie, man, and I'm like, okay, this is turning into like a really good little sci-fi horror flick. Like, it had that sort of, Alien 1, Event Horizon, Dead Space kind of vibe. You ever played Dead Space? It's the gravity thing in this freaking movie. And I have a feeling that Fede Alvarez played Dead Space. But man, that ending, bro. I mean, it's not that I'm looking for an explanation. I guess partially I am. It just, I knew something was going to happen with that baby. Like, it's not like it wasn't foreshadowed. Like, when she said she was pregnant, and the whole thing about the aliens is, I don't know if you know this, but the original Alien, the reason why it was so horrifying is because it's sort of a metaphor on rape and sexual assault, because the face hugger literally implants you with an embryo and you can't do anything about it. You understand what I'm saying? That's what made the original xenomorph so scary. And I really liked how they explained in this movie, like they went into more of the lore of how it impregnates you and how, like, when it's tied onto your head, you can't do anything, man. When the face hugger gets you in its grasp, it's game over. Game over, man. Game over. They should have said that in the movie. I'm telling you. Maybe that would have been just as cringe as to get away from her, you bitch. But anyways, yeah, so that, I like that. Like, again, the old stuff and the face huggers running around and the face huggers in the water, like, that is something that I feel like you have to understand the Alien franchise to know how scary they are. Because I'm sure somebody was watching this, why don't you just step on it? No, dude, these things can leap. They're very strong. Like, it's not a spider. It may look like a spider, but it's not a spider. You understand? This thing is strong. I can't believe they actually borrowed from Alien Resurrection with the whole, like, space sucking. I mean, it did that in the other movies too, but the ending and the way that this thing was beaten sort of kind of felt like that. Maybe it was a little too over the top. Maybe. I don't know. I think that the film, this was going to happen with this movie. People are going to probably unanimously agree that the first two acts were stronger than that third act. It's just, and I already know that some Alien fans are going to hate it, because right now, like, as I'm saying this to you guys, I'm over here like thinking, okay, I may end up at some point putting this movie, like, not liking it at all because of that third act. And I'm not there yet, because I enjoyed myself. I'm not there yet, but as time goes by, we kind of look back at things. And I will tell you that I used to like Alien 3 when I was younger. I don't like it now. Like, I don't even own that movie. I have in my collection, I have the Alien and Aliens box set, and I have the new 4Ks. I know they're not that good. The Aliens one isn't. But I own 1 and 2. And I actually have Prometheus and Covenant, because I don't hate those movies. I actually enjoy them more than 3 and 4. But man, this one, I'm so split on it, dude. That was so weird at the end. But at the same time, part of me understands it. Now, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, the ugly. The Ian Holm, like, digital restructuring, I guess, basically, Rook was supposed to be an android that was of the same model of Ian Holm, and so they're using that sort of deep fake technology. It's very similar to what they did with Rogue One with Grand Moff Tarkin. Remember, very similar, and it feels like they had to sort of hide it behind the little screens because it didn't look too great. It didn't quite look. These things are still, they're kind of in that uncanny valley. It wasn't the best, but I mean, the practical effects really helped the movie a lot. It made it feel more real. The way that they had to sort of maneuver around the ship. I will say this: the ship here was clearly bigger than the ship from the first Alien film, but it felt smaller, or at least maybe not smaller, but it felt maybe the same size. We didn't really get that big scope of when I first saw like the ship they were going to. I was looking at it like, whoa, like this is a big place, and I was wondering what they were going to do with it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it just didn't connect, They couldn't explore the whole ship, obviously, but they gave us enough. And, yeah, not a bad movie. I had a good time with it. I'm not sure if I would recommend people to pay full price for it. If you got the AMC Stubbs deal, or if you want to go on a matinee, it's probably worth seeing it. But I did have to knock some points off for the third act. So to me, yes, it's still good, though. I had a good time. And the first two acts really captured that classic 1979 Alien vibe more than any other movie has. Even Aliens, like, it really did the horror stuff better than Aliens did. This time it's war, but Aliens is still a better movie overall, a classic horror/action movie. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.